People like you. You want a neat story, a headline, a monster you can point at and say, "That's not me. I could never be like that." You want me to be simple. I'm not simple. Welcome to True Stories Retold. What you are about to hear is a first-person confessional narration of an actual case. To respect the privacy of those involved, names and locations have been altered. But make no mistake, every chilling detail is a matter of public record. Tonight's episode, The Grave Garden, confession from the man himself. My name is Ravin Hartono. They call me the Songbird Butcher now. The newspapers like that because it sounds dramatic. They put my face next to the word monster, and the public eats it up. But once, I was just the boy with the soft voice and the pretty hair who helped carry the prayer mats at dusk. Once, I was their golden child. I grew up in a little town called Suraya Timur. Rice fields like oceans, narrow roads like scars. When the call to prayer echoed at sunset, it felt like the entire sky bent down to listen. They said I was bike, good, a good boy. I helped my mother sell fruit. I carried sacks of rice for old neighbors. I learned sacred verses before most kids could write their own names. People stroked my hair and told my mother, "You're lucky. Ravin will grow up to be a holy man." They didn't know about the things I felt when I looked at other boys. They didn't know about the shame that stuck to my skin like sweat in the heat. At night, I would stare at the ceiling and bargain with a God I barely understood. "If you just make me normal, I'll be good forever. I'll do everything right." But feelings don't evaporate just because you pray hard enough. So you learn to split yourself. There's the Ravin everyone loves, the one who smiles and bows and says all the right words. And then there's the Ravin underneath, the one who wants, the one who resents, the one who feels like a mistake that somehow kept breathing. When I was old enough, I left Suraya Timur for Port Ilaro, the big city by the sea. Everyone said I was brave. They thought I was going to be a teacher or a scholar or something respectable. I didn't correct them. Port Ilaro was noisy and bright and dirty and alive in a way my town had never been. Neon signs, street food smoke, motorcycle exhaust, men who smelled like cologne and bad decisions. I started singing at a small lounge and bar. Not the classy kind. The kind full of sailors, married men with loose rings, and kids like me who came from nowhere and needed to survive. I had a decent voice, high, clear. People listened. They clapped. Some of them slipped me phone numbers and bills with too many zeros. Money, attention, eyes lingering on me like I was something worth paying for. Do you know what that does to someone who grew up being told they were dirty for wanting? It feels like a cure. It feels like proof you aren't worthless, at least not completely. I started seeing men in secret. Some were kind, most were not. They liked me because I was pretty, because I was smaller, because I smiled even when the jokes hurt. They thought my smile meant I didn't feel anything. They were wrong. His name, his real name, isn't important now, so let's call him Dimas. Dimas was older, confident in that lazy way rich men are. He was the first one who made me feel like maybe I wasn't a mistake. But people like Dimas don't see you as a person. You're a mirror. You make them feel powerful, desirable. When the novelty wears off, they look for a new mirror. The night it happened, we were in his rented house on the outskirts of Port Ilaro. It was humid, the kind of sticky heat that makes your shirt cling to your spine. We argued about money. Isn't that poetic? He said I was getting clingy, that I was starting to act like a real partner instead of what I actually was, a side thing, a secret. He called me something filthy, not just about who I loved, but about what I was, like I was some kind of gutter thing he'd found and polished up for fun. The heat in my chest. It was like a fuse had been waiting all my life, and he finally lit it. He pushed me. I hit the edge of the table. He laughed, said I was too dramatic. There was a steel bar near the kitchen door, something he used to prop the gate closed sometimes. My hand found it before my mind did. The first swing didn't feel real. Just emotion, like I was performing on stage. Then he made this wet, surprised sound, red blooming where there shouldn't be any. I swung again, and again. By the time my hearing came back, the room was quiet. The TV was still playing a song I used to like. I wish I could tell you I dropped the bar and sobbed and begged forgiveness. I didn't. What I felt in that first, long, silent minute was relief. You know what nobody tells you? Once you've crossed that line, once you've seen someone stop breathing because of your hands, the world doesn't look the same. It doesn't snap back into place. You realize people can disappear, and sometimes nobody asks why. I panicked in a practical way. I wrapped him in plastic and cloth, my hands moving like they already knew the steps. I loaded him into the trunk of his car. I drove toward the industrial district outside Port Ilaro, where the noise of trucks and machinery covered sins. I left him there, where no one was looking for a man like him. On the drive back, I kept waiting for the world to end, for lightning to strike, for the earth to open. Nothing happened. The city kept breathing. Neon lights kept flickering. God stayed silent. After Dimas, I told myself it was an accident, a moment of madness. Then I discovered something that scared me more than what I'd done. Life was easier without him. He couldn't insult me anymore, couldn't threaten to tell people about us. And he'd left things, watches, money, all the crumbs of his life that I could sweep into mine. The second time, it wasn't an accident. Another man, let's call him Arga, loud, cruel in that joking way some men are, where they hurt you but insist you're too sensitive. A pattern forms. They want something from me. My body, my time, my voice. They pay, but they also bruise, sometimes skin, sometimes soul. They remind me I'm less than, and a voice in my head whispers, "You don't have to accept this, not anymore." The bar, the blow, the red, the quiet. After that, it got easier. Once you learn that making someone disappear can solve the immediate problem, your brain keeps that trick on a shelf, easy to reach. The city isn't kind to secrets. Too many eyes, too many ears. I started to feel watched, even when nobody was looking at me. That's when I made the worst decision of my life. Not the most violent, no, the cruelest. I decided to bring some of them home. Home, Saraya Timur, my parents' house. When I came back with a borrowed truck, my mother was so happy she cried. She made my favorite dish, coconut stew, spicy enough to burn the back of your throat. The house smelled like everything good about my childhood. In the back of the truck, under a tarp, was the body of a man I'll call Johan. Around midnight, I moved the truck closer. Every sound felt huge. Behind the house, there was a small patch of earth by the old mango tree. I used to climb that tree as a kid, my father shouting up at me to be careful. Now I was there with a shovel and a body. I told myself I was protecting them, that if I used our land, no one would suspect anything. They were simple people, kind. Who would ever imagine horror blooming in their backyard? The earth there is soft, dark, almost black. It smells like rain and rotting leaves. Dig, drag, lower, cover. I patted the soil flat with my hands like I was tucking someone into bed. I didn't pray. Once I used that spot once, it became a solution. My mother thought I was finally remembering where I came from. She told neighbors proudly, "Raven is so busy in the city, but he always returns to us. He's a good son." She didn't know what was under the new flower bed I made for her. Yes, I planted flowers, marigolds, jasmine. She said, "This is my favorite part of the house now." Underneath, deep down, it wasn't color. It was bone and cloth and regret. You can't hide the truth beneath the earth forever. At first, it was subtle, a strange smell when the wind blew a certain way. My mother wrinkling her nose and saying maybe a rat had died nearby. Flies came, dark specks buzzing over beauty. I watched my mother swat at them with annoyance, not understanding that she was fighting a war she could never win. It wasn't some brilliant detective that found me. It was a phone. One of the men, I'll call him Rudy, had a new, expensive phone. After he stopped breathing, I took it. Police traced it. They followed the signal. When they arrested me in Port Ilaro, I was calm. It felt inevitable, like a song reaching its final chorus. They found trails that led back to Soraya Timur. They came to my parents' house early in the morning. My mother watched as strangers walked into the yard, toward the flowers. When the shovels pierced the soil, my mother said she felt it in her body, like someone had stabbed her. They dug. The smell erupted first, thick, sour, sweet in that wrong way. Then cloth, then bone, then more. I watched the officers' faces change when they saw bones. I watched them get sick, step away, whisper curses under their breath. My mother screamed until her voice broke. My father shouted that it was impossible, but the police looked at them with hard, suspicious eyes. Because really, how could you live in a house where so many people had been hidden under your flowers and not know? They weren't my accomplices, but the police had to ask. It was their job. Neighbors whispered that my father always seemed so serious. Maybe he had a temper. My mother's back bent under that weight. My father stopped going to the mosque during busy hours. They became suspects in their own home, prisoners in a place that had once been a sanctuary. All because of me. They brought me back once, under heavy guard, to point out the places. I saw my childhood home behind police tape. My mother was on the porch, clinging to the railing. She saw the cars, saw me. Her hand flew to her mouth. My father stood stone still, fists clenched at his sides. The officers asked me, "Here? Is this where you buried them?" I nodded. I looked up and saw my father's eyes. There was no rage there. There was confusion, hurt. This quiet, enormous question. How? How could the boy he'd carried on his shoulders have turned their home into a dumping ground? His gaze said, without words, "What did we do to you that you could do this to us?" I had no answer. People ask me now, sitting in this cell, Why did you do it so many times? As if there's a clean number where it would have been understandable. The men I met, they came from night places. They wanted me because I was easy to hide. I was charming. I made them forget their guilt. Inside me, tension built like storm clouds. Some of them hurt me. Some mocked me. Each one felt like a replay of the same story. They had power. I was the secret. They decided how real I was allowed to be. And then, finally, there was a version of the story where I got to decide. Sometimes it was about money. Sometimes it was about control. But underneath, there was one thing. I was tired of being the one who was scared. So I stopped being scared. And people stopped breathing. In court, I became entertainment. The singing killer. The butcher with a microphone. Sometimes in the cell, I would sing to myself. Old love songs. Religious songs from childhood. One day, a journalist asked why I seemed so calm. I said, I already died a long time ago. This is just the body catching up. This is the part where you want me to say, I'm sorry. The truth is complicated. I regret the waste. I regret that I didn't choose a different way to fight back. But mostly, I regret using my parents' love as cover. More than I regret what happened to the men who hurt me, I regret what I did to them. They gave me everything they could. Simple food, blessings whispered over my head. I took that trust and turned their yard into a grave garden. They didn't just lose their son. They lost their neighbors, their peace, their pride. Every time they pray, they're praying on land that once moved with secret decay beneath it. Am I a monster? Or am I a boy who grew up loved for all the wrong reasons, hated for all the right truths, and learned too late that pain, when not healed, mutates into something sharp? I am both things at once. The child who wanted to be pure, to be good, to be worthy of God's love, and the man who decided other people's lives were acceptable currency for his rage and survival. Both are me. Now I sit here, my songs swallowed by concrete walls. Outside, people cross the same streets I did. Boys like me still sing in cheap lounges, still go with men who smell like cologne and danger, still get hurt in places no one sees. Some of those boys will stay victims. Some of them, if the world is very unlucky, will learn what I learned, that once you stop being afraid of crossing that line, there's no clear way back. You asked for my story from my perspective. This is it. Not a plea, not an excuse. Just a mirror held up to a life that went very, very wrong. Tell me, now that you've heard it, do you feel safer thinking I'm just a monster? Or does it scare you more to know I was human the whole time?
This has been True Stories Retold. If you like more stories where real events get retold from the inside, you can subscribe to this show. Leave us a like, or share it to someone who sleeps with one ear open. Thanks for listening. Good night.